Well, Zion, Bryce, and Arches are where many want to go. But those who come to Canyonlands are people in the know. Find out why. Welcome back to My Travel Window, where we show you where you need to go while you've still got the health, wealth, and energy to get there. On day 5 of our journey through 7 parks in 7 days, we come to Canyonlands. In the grand scheme of things, Canyonlands is a popular park. It ranks 29th out of 63 parks nationally in terms of number of visitors each year. Almost 1 million visitors. But when compared to the rest of Utah's so-called Mighty Five, it is the largest and at the same time the least visited of Utah's national parks. Today we're going to see a little bit why that is. Stay to the end and hear the story about how I got lost taking this iconic Canyonlands photo. The lack of visitors to Canyonlands is not because it lacks beauty, but because it feels secondary to other parks. It most closely resembles the Grand Canyon, having the Colorado River running through it. But it's not quite as dramatic, at least from the driving area viewpoints. It has beautiful red rock formations, but it's not quite as stunning as Bryce Canyon. It has some arches, including one very famous one that I think rivals those of nearby Arches National Park. But they're not as plentiful or as up close and personal in most cases. After some research, I've concluded that Canyonlands may have a better combination of all these things than any of the other parks. But those jewels are really reserved for the people who want to explore off-road style vehicles or on trails. So, instead of being the destination resort, Canyonlands is the, quote, as long as we're in the area, let's stop and have a look, unquote, park. It's only a 30-minute drive from Arches, which makes it quite possible to see both parks in the same day, although I think there's enough to see to warrant a separate day or days for each one. For the sake of our one-week adventure, you'll remember that I recommended to you day 3 will be a long travel day, arriving at the Moab area at the end of the day and spending 2 nights there. Day 4, you can spend the entire day exploring Arches without worrying about travel details. The following morning, you can explore the car-accessible portion of Canyonlands. Looking at the map, you'll see that the park has irregular boundaries, but forms a slight hourglass shape. Within that outline, the Colorado River runs diagonally across the park from the northeast. The Green River runs diagonally from the northwest until the confluence point with the Colorado. This Y shape of the rivers divides the park into 3 totally disconnected sections. The northern section, called Island in the Sky, is the part that's generally accessible to all forms of traffic. The southeast, called Needles, has some paved entry roads but is mostly 4-wheel roads and hiking trails. The southwest, called the Maze, is exclusively for high-clearance 4-wheel drive vehicles only. For the sake of this trip, we show you what we can see from Island in the Sky. If 4-wheeling is more your style, a more in-depth exploration sounds wonderfully rewarding. So here is a montage of Canyonlands, which begs to be appreciated. Before I give you the story behind this final picture, let me invite you to like and subscribe our videos. It tells YouTube that people appreciate what we're doing and directs more viewers to our site. Thanks. Here's the story behind my own personal Lost in the Wilderness adventure. The location in this picture is called Mesa Arch, and it's the one photo I knew I really wanted from the park. Directly on the other side of this arch is a completely vertical cliff, and the arch frames the features of the canyon behind it perfectly. It is more breathtaking in person than you can possibly capture on film. As you can see from the map, the site looks like it's right next to the road, and for the most part it is. The trip is a short half-mile walk over what turned out to be a rocky, cactus-strewn desert landscape, hilly enough to not be able to see any real distance ahead. On a normal path, I could do this in 15 to 20 minutes, and this appeared to be fairly easy walking with no major inclines. Picture and all, I expected to take 30 minutes tops. My wife's knees were bothering her, so she elected to stay with the vehicle and dispatched me to get the picture I wanted. And our big vehicle did not fit in the crowded parking area, so we found a pullout, and I headed to get the picture, starting at a place where there was no clearly defined trail, but where many people had obviously walked. It seemed simple enough. I found myself following footprints in the dust, but coming to places where I lost the trail because of rock. And then when the trail resumed, there were often 2 or 3 apparent trails. I generally followed the one with the most footprints and wound up making it to the arch shown here, waited my turn for an uncrowded picture, and headed back, attempting to retrace my original steps. That proved impossible. Now, does it look like it would be possible to get lost going from this viewpoint back to the road? Well, when your only landmarks are rocks and desert plants that all look alike, I can attest that it is. And I can also tell you many other people went a-wandering as well, because there were always hosts of footprints to choose from, although occasionally I had to choose between human footprints and animal tracks, neither of which seemed to be ever moving in a straight line. So much for my natural navigational instincts. By the time I started back, my original time estimate had already been spent, and the trip back was worse. After perhaps 20 to 30 minutes of relatively clueless wandering, I did manage to finally find the road. But when I did, I was so far off that our vehicle was not in sight in either direction. With a 50-50 choice, I was lucky to pick the right path down the road to, by this point, a very concerned wife, whose husband was way overdue and appeared to have abandoned her. My advice: be careful even on a short hike. Take the trails, even if they're longer. Travel in groups when you can, but best of all, find someone with a sense of direction. From Canyonlands, in our next video, we're going to head to park number 6. Monument Valley is about 220 miles from Canyonlands, which is why I recommend touring the Canyonlands in the morning, then covering a good portion of the distance between the parks in the afternoon. Towns are small and far apart, but there's RV parks along the route, as shown here, and a smattering of hotels. We stayed at a hotel in Bluff, located around here, but we had difficulty finding much in the way of restaurants in the area. If you're in an RV, make reservations and stock up on supplies before you leave Moab. Although affiliated with the National Park System, Monument Valley is on Navajo Nation land, so is not officially designated a national park. Another of my favorite photography locations, Monument Valley was made famous by John Ford, the director who filmed many famous westerns there, and it was kept famous by Forrest Gump. Tune in next week for that fascinating story. Until then, safe travels.